Let's take a look at the new pop-up module. So the editing is going to be real similar to what you're used to. We've got a lot of new features that we can take a look at, but we're just going to go over the basics for now. This new system, it can do quite a bit more than what the old one can do, and trying to cover it all in one tutorial video would probably be too much, so I'm just going to focus on the basics. I've got everything basically set up for you to the point that you could just do a new one by using the clone button that I'm sure you remember from cloning pages. So if you just want to keep all the settings the same and just make a new one, you can use the clone button. But first things first, where to get to this new section. So it's called Pop-Up Maker. It'll appear on the left-hand side like you're used to. I do have your other original pop-ups still active because I wasn't sure exactly which ones of these may be needing to come back on in the near future. So I didn't copy over any of them other than the one for Meet the Candidates, which I saw was currently on. You'll be happy to know that even though this plugin didn't have the feature that Marlene had mentioned in an email the other day, I was able to write some custom code, and I'll show you what that is. Some error validation for the scheduling. So let's just start with what it looks like, I guess. If I open the site in a different thing. It's going to look just the same as what you're used to. I added just a little bit of extra styling so that when a pop-up comes up, the background blurs a little just to focus all the attention on the pop-up message. But that's about it. You can close it by clicking it off. You can close it by clicking the X, and you have full control over long or how long the delay period is between when someone closes it and won't see it again versus when they would see it again. You can make it, disable showing them for just that session. You can make it show them again in an hour. Sorry if you hear that noise. That's my cat playing in the background. Okay, so let's take a look at how to make one of those go. So here we have the Meet the Candidates pop-up. I'm going to click into it, and it's going to look real familiar because it's going to look just like editing a page. So here we have our content area with the visual block builder. You can do it in just the real plain way with just the text, and you don't have to use the shortcodes. You can just put your text and links in. But if you want to add more things like putting in a picture with a single image module, or any of the other modules that are available in the visual builder, you can split things up with your different row and column settings if you want to add more design to it. For something basic, I still just use the block editor and then put in a text block because that's just a habit for me. Okay, so once you have designed it, here are your settings. So these are the things that I'm not going to dive all the way into. I'm just going to cover the ones that are the most meaningful. So triggers is your first option, and that is what determines what makes the pop-up show. So for these pop-ups like the ones that you've been using that just show site-wide and they act as an alert, then the type of trigger, and I'm basically going to just pretend like we're starting this over. So I'm going to delete everything here and then walk you through setting it up. Okay. Delete this one too. All right, so all these settings are fresh now. So first I'm just gonna basically walk through these. So add a trigger. I don't want this to be click open. That is a trigger that you can make a pop-up happen if the user takes an action and clicks on like a button or something. You can make a pop-up show up, which is really useful for various type of interactive design features. It's not what we're going to use it for in this particular case. So we're going to open this menu and go to time delay auto open. That's the alert that we're used to. And because we are forcing this on them, because we are going to pop it up in their face without them taking an action, we don't want it to keep coming up on every page that they load. We only want them to see it once. So we're going to make it stop showing after they have told it to close. So there's other options that are in here, but 9.5 times out of 10, you're going to want to set this cookie, which is what makes the pop-up not show anymore when the user closes the pop-up. So everything is good here. We're going to go to add. This next screen is where we can decide how long after the page loads before we want to pop the pop-up open. If you want the page to load a little bit and then the pop-up to show, you would just add some milliseconds to this, but I think the default is fine for our purposes here. Now, this cookie that got added down here, you will see that it says we have a 1 month setting on the cookie so that the pop-up won't show again for a whole month after someone told it to close. That's too long. We're going to change this to 1 day. And you could make it 1 hour and then it would show again if they came back to it in an hour. You could make it session wide, but like the problem with a session cookie is people don't really close their browser tabs anymore. You've experienced this with the other pop-up plugin where it wouldn't come back until after you like actually closed this browser out and came back to it. So I think that I don't use this so much. I actually just would do, I would lean on this and I would say like 1 day seems about right. If it's something you want to be a little more aggressive about, then and you want them to be reminded if they come back to the site multiple times in a day, but not on every page during each session, you could change that to like 1 hour or a couple hours. And it says enter a plain English time before cookie expires. So you could say 2 hours or you could say 1 hour. I'm going to leave this to 1 day. Watch the recorded live stream here. Meet the board can. Maybe we actually want. No, I'll let you change this if you want. I'm gonna leave it to a day. I was just asking myself if maybe 1 hour would be more appropriate here, since this is a pretty important notice that you have going on. But you can change this if you want. All right, that is the trigger section. Targeting, we're not going to use this, but this is one of the most powerful features of this new plugin module because this allows us to show the different pop-ups based on different conditions. So we can do just about anything you can think of here. We can make a pop-up only show on the home page. We can make a pop-up show on selected pages. We can make it show on selected posts. We can make it show if there's a certain type of element that is on the page or not. There's so much in here. But for these types of, you can even do like cookies. Like if a cookie exists, I added some like advanced controls to this from a uh, I have the premium license to some extras on here, and I have the developer version, so it doesn't cost anything for you guys to use my licenses for this. And it has some advanced conditions that can be really useful for like marketing automation, although what you guys are going to be using this for is primarily these alerts. So really you don't have to worry about doing this targeting thing. Where I could see it becoming helpful is if you have an alert that is only related to a particular school, then you can make it so that the pop-up doesn't show up unless the person goes to that individual school page. So I'll just walk you through that now. Pages selected. So let's say we only want this pop-up to show on Belmont. I'm going to click in here and start typing. See if it finds it. Here we go. So we have Belmont Elementary. That's our Belmont page. And so if I saved it with this setting, then this would make it so that the pop-up can only show, well, it can only even load on this page. If you wanted to do the opposite of any of these rules, you simply click this exclamation point to turn it red. Now what that would do is that is going to make the pop-up show on every page of the site except for Belmont Elementary's page. So this can go really, really deep, and we can go deeper in that if there's any need for it. But for the time being, I think we're just going to move past this now, and because we want this to show on every page for this particular one anyway. Display, I had selected these options before, but I'll walk you through them. So for these alert ones, you can just go ahead and hit center pop-up, and then it will apply all of the rest of these for you. Appearance, we're just going to use the default theme. The size, generally medium is fine. If you have like a lot more content, you could make it larger. If you've got a big picture inside of there and you want it to not get squeezed down, you could make it larger. You can choose what type of animation you want it to have, whether you want it to fade in, slide in, or fade and slide at the same time. I'm going to leave that to the default. Please don't make it play a sound. I find sounds on pop-ups to be really intrusive. If you were doing something that was like, if it was highlighting an error that someone was making in the user experience, then maybe alerting them with the sound would be appropriate. In this case, I think not, though. Position, you can define where it shows up on the page, but again, middle and center is great. Advanced, you can basically leave this alone. If we were getting to the point where we have like multiple pop-ups happening, this would be the one section in here that would matter. If you need to be able to show multiple pop-ups at a time and have multiple stacking on top of each other, then the stackable button will allow more than one pop-up to show at once and let them stack on top of each other. I think for now we don't really need that at this point. But it also can't hurt, so I'm just going to toggle it on. Okay, the close button. This is where you determine how pop-ups are allowed to be closed. What I change on this is I always go into alternate methods, and I've already done this. And I toggle this option on, the click overlay to close. What this is, if we can get this pop-up to come back. Here's a secret. Well, it's not really a secret, but this is something that could be useful. If you're testing a pop-up, let's say you're testing like the design of it and you want to take a look at it, but it's gone because you clicked it off already. The way to get it back is to open these cookies and take off the cookie that is making it not show. So you click on here and then you go into cookies and then you go into the option that says www.rockford, open up the cookie drop down, and it's that same cookie name that was on our trigger setting. So it's PUM 100501. So this one, I remove it, refresh, now it's going to come back. So if you click overlay to close, if you don't have that on, then you can only close it with this X button here. When you toggle that option on, makes the pop-up a little less obtrusive because then you don't have to like focus on such a tight area to get it to go away. You can have it go away by anywhere outside of the pop-up gets it to go away as well, which is just a little bit less sort of aggressive of a way of doing a pop-up. Advanced, we don't need anything. Here's the other big one that is going to matter to you guys: scheduling. So I had put a schedule on this one already. I base it off of your pop-up that was on for Meet the Candidates, and it had from 10:05 at, I think it was 5 a.m. to 10:07 at 9 a.m. This cat is going crazy. 10:05 at 5 a.m. to 10:07 at 9 p.m. So let's pretend this was gone. Now we're going to hit add a new schedule. And there's a few options in here. You can tell it to start and then continue. You can tell it to, start date would be like, I want it to start on October 7th and stay on until I manually turn it off. End date would be the opposite of that. It would be, I want it to start right now, today, but end at a future date that I set without me having to manually turn it off. Chosen dates would be all select dates. So I want it to show on October 6th, on October 9th, on October 13th. The one that is probably going to be used most frequently is the date range option, which I'll open in a second. And that's what you've been used to with this other one, where you're saying you want it to start on the 5th and end on the 7th. Office hours is kind of a unique one. If you have anything that is recurring, that recurs on specific days of the week. So, for example, you could have a pop-up show on Tuesdays and Thursdays between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. That's a little more of an outside use case, I think. The date range one is probably going to be 80 or 90% of the time the one that you go for. So I'm going to add that one, and here's how we do it. You can or not give it a name. That doesn't really matter. You don't have to check this because all of your users are going to be here in Michigan for the most part, unless someone has like a parent out of state, but you still want them to see Michigan time because everything centered around the school district is based on Michigan time, which is what your server is set to. So here is the main scheduling area. So you can have it just do date. I think that if you just do the dates, I think it is midnight is the on and off. If you want to go more granular and do the time, then you turn all day from yes, which is the default, to no. And then that gives you start and end times. So to match what we had with the Meet the Candidates one on the other thing, we can select the start date to the 5th and then go to 5 a.m. We can end it on the 7th at 9 p.m. Oops. And you can also just type in if you want. The underlying one will show military time, but the overlay version shows regular time. And the thing that I added overnight was what Marlene had talked about with if these dates were slightly misconfigured. If you like cross your fingers for me, because I just finished this and it was giving me a lot of trouble, but I think it works. So I have my end date set to the 7th. So let's say that I made a flub and I put my start date that was later than my end date. I just get a little warning saying that the start date, oops, that's the wrong warning. It should say It should say end date is before the start date. I'll fix that. But anyway, it gives you a warning and says, please edit your schedule. So we'll change that back to 10:05, add, and then same as anything, update. And it'll go on. So the other thing that you can do if you don't want to, if you have a pop-up that is going to behave in relatively the same ways, and you don't want to have to go through and like click all the different style options and turn the close overlay on and change the trigger and add a cookie. If you don't want to do all that, you can just go into your all pop-ups menu, clone this. Once it's cloned, it's not going to be published yet. You can go in here. All those settings will be pre-configured. Change your content here. And then all this probably stays, but what you would likely need to change is your schedule, unless it just happened to be on the exact same schedule. And then once you published it, it would go live depending on what you had put in the schedule. But then that way you just don't have to, fiddle with setting up all these every single time. I use the clone tool for pop-ups almost exclusively, especially if I get a design that I really like with like an image and things along those lines. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one for now. So that is the real broad strokes overview about what can be done with the pop-up, with the new pop-up system. There's all sorts of other things that it can do. There's themes and styling. There you can get real deep with the targeting conditions where you can show different pop-ups for like the different types of user behaviors, like whether they have visited a certain page or whether they have been on the website for more than X amount of minutes, or how far they've scrolled down the page, or if they're about to leave the page. Those tend to be more marketing based things. And so they may or may not apply. But if you want to go deeper into what could be done with this, or if you want another tutorial for how to do that click trigger, if you ever are working on a page design and you have an element that you just want to like give people more information about, but you don't want to build that extra information into the main part of the page, having a pop-up that can come up when you click a more information button or something along those lines can be a really nice user experience from time to time. So if you ever come across a need for that and want a tutorial on the click trigger style, I can happily build one of those for you and make an example, and then also make you a tutorial video to go along with it. It's pretty straightforward. There's just like a couple little things that make it not completely intuitive. But I'm going to leave it here for now before this gets too long. And I think that you should be all set to take over from here. But if you need anything, just give me a shout and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Have a great day.